Hey guys, welcome. It is 9:02 for this month's coaching call with the Run Experience. We have a very special guest. Tina Muir is on the line with us. Tina, you want to say hi?
Hello, I feel very honored that you said I'm a special guest. I wonder if you said that to everyone, or am I just lucky enough?
I do say that to everyone, Tina. I'm not going to
Oh,
lie.
well, thanks.
But you are a very, very special guest. And anytime, we get anyone on here, it's because they are special, right? We think
Oh,
you've got something to say and have some value and have some really cool things to contribute. And we got our crew, our TRE crew in, and I know they are signing in from all over the world. You know, we've done a lot of these calls at the end of the day on Pacific Coast time. And, our growing group of runners across the pond, so to speak, are like, hey, bro, what's the deal? This is like the middle of the night for us. Can you help us out? So it would kind of worked well with our schedules doing this in the morning to be able to, capture some people over in England. So we're super psyched about that.
yeah, I'm happy you're taking the England people into account because I'm sure, as everyone can tell by now, that I have a special affiliation with England.
She's actually American. She just likes to talk in that accent.
Yeah, it's all fake.
That's what I've heard. I'm kidding. So, Tina, we have some good questions queued up, and it would be fun to get your perspective on things. And as I said, what I like to do is take turns basically for people who have questions. I like to get them on live, and we get a chance to have a little bit of a conversation back and forth.
Mhm.
It's like a really nice, kind of high touch moment and opportunity with these guys. But I also like to just get a little bit of a sense of, who you are and your background and what you're doing these days as a way of leading in. Now,
Yeah, yeah.
for you, you've been
Go on.
running for a long time. You grew up in England. You went to college in the United States, correct?
Yep.
And then you ran there, and then you since have been racing professionally. You raced for Saucony.
Yep.
Recently, you were on the World Championships team for Britain, yes?
Yes, I was.
That is very exciting. And then also, you just had a pretty big event at the London Marathon.
hmm
Was that
Let's
just
say
this
that.
year?
Yeah, that was well, not even a month ago now. Feels like a long time, but yeah.
And you had like a pretty big race there in terms of, you went under the 240 marathon mark. Was that the first time you've
hmm
done that?
Yes, even though I'm a big fan of visualization, and when I did my first marathon, I spent a lot of time visualizing the race before I did it, and I was visualizing running under 240. So when I didn't do it in the first, and then the second, and then the third, it didn't feel like I hadn't done it. So yes, it is in reality, but in my head, I'd done it so many times that it feels a bit weird saying that I only did it last month.
You like Jedi mind tricked yourself into running a sub 240. That's pretty amazing. Like, so basically
I
by the
did.
time you
I wish
physically
it
did it,
wasn't.
you're like, oh, no big deal. I've already done this in my mind several times.
Yeah,
That's pretty
well, it was kind of like that, but kind of also the other way of like, wow, I actually did it. Like, rather than just being like, wait, I didn't? Because
mm,
before I just couldn't understand that I hadn't done it.
that's amazing. What point in the race did you know you were going to make it?
Actually, I didn't until I came around the corner. For the London Marathon, you finish right by Buckingham Palace. You pass Buckingham Palace, and then you've got the point two to down the mall. So
Mm-hmm.
I actually didn't know until I turned that corner because I didn't want to know. I tend to be a very intuitive person with my running, and I
Mm,
find if I look at my watch or I see a split, I tend to panic either way. Like if it's faster than I want it to be or expect it to be,
mm.
then I think, oh no, I'm going to blow up. And if it's slower, then I think, how am I working so hard for this being this pace? So I actually forced myself not to look. So I actually didn't know until I turned the corner.
That's incredible. So the whole race, you won't look
hmm
at splits?
I did look at splits, actually more than I usually did for London the first 10 miles, and I
Yeah.
tried to stop myself, but I couldn't help it. But yeah, after 10 miles, I don't
Try
think I
not
looked
to. You
at
just
all.
try to dial in. Well, that's
Yeah.
a really interesting thing. Especially when you're on a course that, maybe there's a headwind or maybe there's hilly terrain. I can tell you that actually myself, I used to, race competitively in triathlon a lot, and I used to race with a power meter all the time. And I kind of had a similar feeling where every once in a while I used to race and stare at my power meter, but it was just sort of getting in my head. It was sort of getting in the way of my ability to perform if I was hitting a power and it felt too easy or felt too hard or some other thing was happening. And finally, my coach took a piece of black electrical tape and he put it over my power meter to my horror right before my next race. And I actually had one of my best, races ever. And I had one of
Yeah.
my fastest bike splits because I was just racing more intuitively and I wasn't staring at the damn number all the time. So I thought that was that's kind of a cool thing.
No, I would believe it 100% because if you think about it, your body doesn't actually know a pace. Like you can't, your body can't say, oh, I'm running a 7 minute pace compared to, like, it depends on the weather, it depends on how you're feeling, it depends on so many different things. Your body doesn't understand that. All it knows is how to run fast or how to run hard and,
Mm,
the level of effort. So, yeah, it's actually good. And I'm always encouraging people to give it a try and just promise me they will turn their watch away and almost every time when people try this, so anyone listening, I would say do it and let me know. But almost everyone who tries this says to me, I ran a PR or I felt so good or it went really well because you're not taking that mental side of things into where you are thinking what you should be doing. You're just doing the best you can rather than, letting a number that doesn't mean anything
yeah.
to your body dictate you.
That's interesting. So with that type of information when you run, I always found that, especially with really new athletes, and I was this for myself, the that information was helpful in terms of establishing that feel and basically learning to set a speed limit, if you will, so that you're not going out too hard. And I was
Hmm.
listening to your podcast with actually a few episodes, but I listened to one just with Jeff Godet, the founder of
Hmm.
Runners Connect, who you work with, and we'll talk about that as well. But helping runners get a sense of not to go too fast. But do you find that even in the very beginning with your brand new runners, you still want them without those numbers, without that information?
I mean, I think the beginning is good. Like maybe I tell people to choose random numbers, things that don't really mean anything. Like in a marathon, I would say look at, 1 mile, 4 mile, 7 mile. So random numbers or, rather than 5K, 10K. Or, if you're in a shorter race, maybe look at your average pace when you're about what you think is 3/4 of a mile in. So you can kind of glance down at it, know to adjust your pace. Okay, I'm a little bit too fast, I'll back off a little bit, and then maybe check it again, just past a mile so you can't see the exact split. I don't know.
Mm,
That's what I tend to encourage people to do, and then you just kind of learn. When I tell
don't
people
too
this, I
fast.
say, when you look at your watch and it says a certain number, like take a moment to like do a body scan or a body check. Like think, okay, how fast do I feel like I am physically moving along the ground?
Mm,
How is my breathing right now? How just so you kind of register and take in how that feels in
yeah.
every sense of the word, so you kind of realize, okay, this is what 8 minute pace feels like, or whatever it may be, but you kind of get your body, you register the physical side of it with what it actually feels like.
That's cool. So for you, that's that intuition, and it sounds like developing that intuition takes some practice. It doesn't happen overnight, but by constantly going out and mentally thinking about these aspects, all of a sudden that becomes a little bit sharper. Do you train that
Yeah.
way as well? Will you train, you know, new school with all these gadgets, or do you, train the way that you race, as in, you don't like to look at those numbers too much?
Well, I'm definitely a Garmin addict. I do wear my Garmin every day, and I'm one of those people that will run till it hits 00. 9.00
Mm,
rather than but I tend to find that for the most part I don't look at it during the hard days. I actually will either get my coach to like reset it without me looking in between repeats, or I will pull it far away from me so I can't see the numbers, and then know by by remembering which buttons I need to press to reset, and then I'll look at it afterwards. I love looking at the numbers afterwards
yeah.
and just analyzing them and seeing what I've done and how comparing it to before, even though I know I shouldn't. But
Yeah, right.
yeah, I do like looking at the numbers, but like during the workout itself, I like to be just trusting what my body is telling me, how I'm feeling. And especially in things like tempos where you've got a long extended effort, I like to not look until the very end.
Towards the end. That is interesting. Now, that um, you know, that mindset and that, urge where you need to see the numbers and you're very tied and connected with it. This may seem like a strange question, but do you feel like there's a certain mental makeup, physical genetics aside, that make runners what they are? Do
Mhm.
you feel like that is a mindset that has helped propel you to where you've gone in your running career, or do you feel like that's something that you've constantly had to battle and navigate around, and it's almost like if you indulge it too much, it would actually push you in the other direction?
You mean if with the like ignoring my paces, or you mean
Well,
if I
the
were to kind of pay attention?
the sense of being, very focused and emotionally invested in those numbers. And I was kind of getting the sense, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like during the race, you don't want to look at the numbers because you don't want to have that early emotional reaction, positive or
Yeah.
negative, in the.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would definitely say that's the case. Because, yeah, and I would say that's definitely helped me along the way to, keep getting to the next level. And I think it can help everyone. I do have a lot of elite runner friends who do look at their watch all the time. They do take in those numbers and they really, focus on it. But, even some of them, I've had them try, my way of doing things and they find it helps them too. But some people just, don't want to let that go. But yeah, I would say that's been a huge part because it means that, yeah, like you said, you don't get that emotional initial response, especially, in the middle of a race, maybe during those moments of doubt or the moments of struggle. If you look down and you see a time, you're going to react emotionally to it, and that's when it may, come back to bite you. Like I mentioned earlier, there is no happy medium for me when it comes to looking at my watch. I either panic because I feel like I'm too fast and there's no way I can keep this up, or I panic because I'm not running what I feel like is fast enough. So I feel for me it's better to just stay away from that so that I don't, like you said, get that emotional reaction. Instead, I'm kind of just focusing on the task at hand, which is to complete the race, and you're just kind of taking it as yeah, a task to be completed rather than bringing in those pressure and expectations that you have from yourself or maybe from others.
Yeah. So when you're out racing, and I want to get into your background and career, one of the things that I'm always fascinated with is when people choose to go to the full marathon distance. And I know that, for elite runners, they could be running at a very high level for 10, 15, almost, 20 years before they actually let themselves go to the full marathon distance. And
Hmm.
then, we have runners who start running late in life or they're brand new. I was actually warming up for the Boston Marathon this spring, and I ran in line with this woman who actually started this high school program getting kids to actually train for the Boston Marathon and run, or getting trained for local marathons and getting ready. So you kind of see the
Right.
spectrum of people tackling the marathons at different levels of their running career and also just their age. So for you, when did you actually feel like you were ready to hit the marathon, and what were some of the events that you were specializing in prior to that?
Yeah, well, firstly, that's really interesting what you said about that high school program. I never would have expected that, but there are some high school runners who do move up to the marathon, but I personally started off in running, very early on, just cross country races, and then I went to college and did university in America and did the whole, track and cross country through that, and I did 5K, 10K was kind of my
Yeah.
specialty.
Did
I
did
was
10K feel long at the time? Was that like the big long race?
Yeah, it was, but I kind of always knew I was going to end up at the marathon. I'd always loved my long runs in that training, and so I kind
Mm.
of had a feeling that someday marathon was going to be like my thing. But
Then
yeah,
you were
10K definitely did feel long.
Yeah, and just out of curiosity, I know you've got I want to hear more about your journey, but just quickly, for your 10K pace and your running and long running in college, what constituted a long run for you? Like how far did you actually end up going at times and just getting ready for your season?
Well, I think the longest long run I would do was 16, maybe 17. Um, but even
Miles or
now, I'm still the
kilometers?
same miles, sorry,
Okay.
yeah. Um, but even then, and especially now, I kind of was always pushing for more. Like, really, I only needed to do like 14 miles,
Hmm.
but I just loved the longer ones, so I would push for 16 or um, 15, 16, 17. But yeah, 14 to 16, I would say, was what I did for a long run most of the time.
Oh, interesting. That's so you're still going pretty far, so more than double the distance.
Yeah.
And was that like, everyone, regardless whether or not they're running the 5K or 10K the mile, like would everyone on the team go and sort of do that long run together, or were you all assigned your own individual long runs and you go and do this off on your own?
It was a little bit of both. Most of the 800 milers would do 12 miles, 10 to 12 miles was mostly theirs. And the reason we had this long run was because my coach kind of saw it as another workout for the week. So that way we could do, the two harder runs on Tuesday, Friday, or if we had a race, Tuesday, Saturday. And then the long run would be mostly easy, just very, very, very comfortable pace. But it would just be another, hard effort on your body, but not in the sense of the actual effort, just the long time on your feet for a college runner. So yeah, it was a bit of both really. Everyone had a long run, but the mile 1500, 800 runners probably did max of 12, whereas the 5K, 10K people would all go up to about 14.
Okay. So you did that. You sounded like you really liked those longer runs, whereas I'm sure there were some of the distance athletes who were like, that was probably the worst thing on the planet, and they would have rather just stayed on the track the whole time. How quickly after college did you decide to move to the marathon? And, was it like, okay, I'm going to do a marathon, but I'm going to train some 10Ks and some halves in the short term and then build up? Or you're like, I graduated, I can't get to the starting
Let me
line
do
of my next marathon.
it. I don't know. I mean, I guess it was a bit of the middle ground there. I did try for another 1 to 2 years to get my track times down a little bit more.
Hmm.
So I did 2 years, I think, or maybe a year. Yeah, it was about a year of just finding some more races. I was working as an assistant coach at LaSalle University in Philadelphia. And so we were going to these races anyway. So a lot of the time I would jump in and maybe pace one of the girls and things like that. So I did try for about a year, but by the end of that, I was so burned out on track. I had
Yeah.
no interest on keeping going with that. I think a lot of runners in my situation would have kept going with track a few more years, but I was just fed up with it. So then, yeah, we started looking towards the roads, and I did do, I think, maybe 3 or 4 half marathons before I went on to the marathon. It was pretty much a case of like, I just want to do it. Let me get there. But my coach wanted to be smart with it and kind of build me up slowly. So yeah, he did make me do some half marathons, and we kind of built up a bit slower, I guess, just to make sure that my body was ready to handle it.
Were there any general like trends you were seeing with like post collegiate runners or elite runners about when they typically went to the marathon? And did you have a sense of like, okay, I need to be running X amount of miles comfortably, and I need to have been a runner for a certain period of time before I'm ready? Were there any like kind of ballpark, measurements that you all collectively looked at?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I guess a few years ago, my answer probably would have been different to what it is now.
Yeah,
When I was coming out of college, I was surrounded by college runners who I knew, and I'd say most of them kind of took a little while, and they wanted to make sure that they did everything they could possibly do on the track before they moved across, and
right,
kind of took a little bit longer than I did, especially in England. I mean, in England, most of the distance, the marathon runners are, late 30s. So in
sure.
England, I was a bit of an early adopter
Mm,
with the marathon. But in the US, it seems people move a bit quicker. But actually, yeah, over now, I would say now I've kind of got to know people in the elite running and just in general, like you mentioned earlier, there's a wide spectrum. So, I often meet marathoners who have run, around 240 who maybe only took up running when they were 35 and they did this at age 41 with three kids. So, I kind of see it all now,
yeah.
all ends of the spectrum of people joining and taking on the marathon. But I think a lot of it does come down to your body has to be able to handle, probably a minimum of about 60 miles a week. So people kind of have to be able to handle that before they can try the marathon.
Yeah, interesting. So, do you find athletes going the other direction? Once they have gone out to the marathon, do you feel like at the professional level, they've gained in distance and maybe strength and stamina, but it's scrubbed their speed a little bit? Or do you find that actually there's been something in the marathon that has actually helped them, be a little bit more mature at even like the 10K race distance, and they can come down to the 10K and run faster than they have in the past?
Absolutely, you are right on the marker there, which is surprising. Like most people don't actually realize this, and I feel like I'm constantly fighting a battle trying to convince people of exactly what you just said right there. And actually my coach is a huge fan of this to the point where you just said I ran a PR in the marathon and had a great month. Well, now we're going back to speed, so I'm going to go do track workouts and do shorter stuff and then I'll go back to the marathon. It actually works both ways. So
Yeah.
yeah, once you do a marathon, you have, like you said, that stamina, that strength, and then when you go to the track, your body is kind of stronger, so you can almost kind of muscle your way around. And a lot of people end up running PRs on the track and in the shorter distances after a marathon, and then they end up running a PR in the marathon after getting the speed. And I mean,
Yeah.
we did a proper full-on speed segment in the fall, and I mean clearly that worked for me this time round. So
Yeah.
yeah, I intend on keep doing that. But not every elite runner has realised that or is a fan of that. And it's not even about just elite runners. I think everyone can benefit from going down to the shorter distances and then
Sure.
coming back up again.
Sure. Well, and I think you agree with this. I think that, the principles of performance for runners of any level are probably going to be the same. It just varies in degree and how far you're pushing for
Yes.
what you're doing. So you just ran the marathon. We're getting some questions. Richard has been asking like, hey, when should I taper before my running my first marathon? Um, we had another question about um, racing weight versus
Hmm.
recovery weight. Uh,
Yep. There's a heat one as well.
there was a heat one in there as well. Some really good ones, and I
Yeah.
wanted to kind of get into those, but I just wanted to like before we dove, full on into the open conversation with everyone.
Hmm.
You've just run London, right? It was just in April.
Yep.
Um, have you been, what's the rest of your year look like? Do you have more runs on the schedule and races on the schedule? And if so, if you're planning your next marathon, what goes into your process in terms of like, okay, I just ran April, I had a fantastic race. I'm going to run another marathon in July, or you know what, I'm going to wait a full year before I go ahead and do that again.
Hmm. Oh yeah, no, I this is something I love to talk about because I think there's quite a few aspects of this that people will be surprised by. Firstly, being that after London, I took a full 2 weeks off everything. No running, no, no biking, no swimming. I didn't do anything for 2 weeks, which was
Yeah.
huge and so important. And it's not just elite runners. I think a lot of people need to take, it doesn't have to be maybe 2 weeks, but take at least 5 days off after a marathon. So yeah, I took 2 weeks off and now I'm back running, but I'm in very like build up phase, so it's just mostly easy running. And yeah, we have actually just decided my racing for the year. My next marathon is California International, which is December 4th.
Oh,
So
right
yeah,
on, out in our neck of the woods. Have you been
yeah.
out for that race before?
No, I've always wanted to. I've heard good things about it. So then you better be there if it's in your neck of the
I
woods.
will be there. We'll get coffee before.
Yeah.
I'll get you going. That's cool.
Yep, and I am a coffee drinker now. I never used to be, so that sounds good. But yeah, so that kind of answers your question. No, I don't go straight into another one. And what I was saying a few minutes ago, we are going to do a speed segment, so that's going to be the focus for the next, well, till mid-August. So I'm going to be doing a lot of shorter races, some 5K, 10K, 7 miles, I think is the longest race I'm doing. So yeah, we're going to be doing a lot of shorter stuff because, like I just said, I really, really believe that helps me a lot to get better in the marathon. And I personally believe that you only have a certain number of marathons like in you, especially if you do race them, all out.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to kind of burn my body out of marathons too quickly. And my coach is a big fan of taking not doing more than two a year, taking a season off marathons regularly. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing, and I'm excited for California, but I've got to get my speed back in my legs before I can even think about marathon training.
I love it. So this kind of segues into, to the questions we're seeing. One, and in a weird way, I sort of feel like they kind of go together. One was, how long you taper before your first marathon and recover afterwards. And then the other question was, and I feel like this is connected, is, your racing weight versus quote unquote recovery weight.
Hmm.
And obviously your body goes through different phases as you train through these different levels. I know it's really hard when athletes go through, taper and recovery things, especially when they're very focused on, keeping their, little light fit runner body, and they feel
Hmm.
like they might
Hmm.
lose that if they give themselves that recovery on either end. Um, I know you just wrote a blog post on this as well, which we'll give a little shout out in a
Yeah,
second, but like what's been your process there between, going into races, going out of races, in terms of how long you choose to taper, and then, has racing weight and quote unquote recovery weight, has that been something that you've had to deal with as well?
yeah. Well, firstly, I've never heard of the term recovery rate weight, but I quite like that. I think I might use that in the future. I don't know.
I'm
Did
at
you
my
make that
recovery
up, or
weight
was
right
that?
now.
Yeah, oh no, I am too. Um, yeah, when it comes to before the race tapering, that is a huge part of things, and it allows your body to go into it, or go into a race feeling good. Although usually, I don't know if everyone else is the same, but I actually feel pretty bad the week before a race, just feel tired and like sluggish and just heavy. And that's completely normal. And yeah, everyone obviously worries a little bit about gaining weight during that time because you're not running as much, but it's going to help your body so much to reduce your mileage. I don't do as much as some people. I usually do about 2 weeks total. Maybe, the first week, maybe 20% less than usual, and then the week before, maybe I'll do like 60% of my usual. Um, very easy, very light, just making sure I feel rested. And then when it comes to the weight thing, I mean, during that taper time, people tend to get a bit confused and think that they need to, they're worried about gaining weight, but you shouldn't really gain weight because all you're doing is converting um, the percentage of carbs that you're eating uh, to be higher. So, you should be taking out some fiber, taking out fat, taking out protein, and replacing that with carbs. So the number of calories shouldn't really go up very much. So I actually find that personally myself, I don't actually gain any weight that week before because I'm just changing the percentage of uh, calories that are coming from carb sources. And then, yeah, afterwards, this is something I'm very, very passionate about. And, you know, anyone who, oh, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, my computer just went a bit funny for a second there. Um, Anyone who knows me or will know from now on, this is something that I really, really, really feel passionately about because people are so worried about gaining weight after a marathon. Because yeah, you want to be at your lightest, you want to be at your ideal weight um, for the race, and that's absolutely fine. You've worked hard for it. You want to give yourself the best chance, and that includes getting your nutrition right. That includes being at the weight that is personally good for you, even though I want to encourage people right now to not be so focused on, a weight number. It going into my races this year, I had no idea what I weighed, and it was actually really refreshing because you're just focusing on getting the right fueling in rather than hitting a specific number. So I would encourage people not to use a scale, not to look at it, and just focus on getting the right foods in, and then naturally your body will sit at where it feels most comfortable. But yeah, after a race, I am a huge fan of indulging in whatever you want. You've deserved it. And allowing your body to gain that weight because yeah, your body is not it's not healthy for your body to sit at one weight all year round, especially if you've been, monitoring your intake to make sure you are at the lightest weight you can be for yourself. So I tend to gain 5 to 10 pounds within a few weeks of the race. And right now, if I look at myself, I definitely have lost a lot of the muscle definition, and that's okay. Naturally over the course of a season, when you get to the bigger races, your body is going to lean down. So, I would really say people shouldn't be so concerned or worried about gaining weight and taking time off after a race, and just allow your body to focus on recovery and be a human being. That's another thing I feel like important is that.
Be a human being.
What was that?
I love that phrase. I'm just curious, like what comes to mind, when runners aren't being a human being, what aren't they doing and what should they be doing more of?
Yeah, no, that makes it seem like we're all aliens. Well, I just mean like, we tend to get into this just spiral of where we become defined by running. So I always say that I become the runner named Tina rather than Tina the runner. So during, just a slight change of words, but I think it kind of gets across what I mean. We become like obsessed with it. We have to do everything revolving around our running. Whereas, during that time off after a marathon, or even, few weeks beyond that, you can put other things first. You can go to bed at 1 in the morning and not be concerned that you're not getting enough sleep, or you could go for a hike with your loved one, not worrying that you're going to roll your ankle. Like I kind of enjoy being someone who just sits and watch TV all day, so just not so much allowing running to define you like it usually does. And even though we don't want it to define us, it often does end up being the case. So I like being, yeah, a normal person.
That's really interesting. This is something that I've thought about at various times. In the beginning, when you take that newer athlete, and I know you guys are probably shepherding people through this transition in with Runners Connect, but when you get
Hmm.
that new athlete, and at first they're like, well, no, I'm not a runner. I'm going to do this, but I'm not a runner in any way. And all of a sudden, they start to identify themselves as a runner. It's this very empowering thing. You can almost see the smile on their face, and
Yeah.
they sort of don their Superman cape, and all of a sudden, they're able to tackle any and everything. But on the other end, what's interesting is that when we identify, and I think this is what you're saying, with running almost too much, it's not an empowering thing anymore. It becomes a limiting thing. They're like, well,
Yeah,
I'm a runner.
absolutely.
I can't go skiing this weekend because I might hurt myself. I'm a
Hmm.
runner and I have no upper body strength, so of course I can't do a pull up. I'm a runner, so I really can't help you move your couch because I don't want to mess up my back. It's
Yes.
kind of that interesting balance.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I mean. Like, we can say, running is just a part of who we are. I'm a runner, and yeah, you get to that point where you're proud of it, like you said, especially new runners, you can see that transition. But yeah, it does limit us and, make us miss out on things, which is fine, for the greater good. The feeling, I mean, I'm sure most of the listeners agree, the feeling you get when you cross the finish line, knowing that all your hard work and all that time you've put in has been worthwhile. Well, that to me is 100 times worth all those sacrifices I made. But that's
Yeah,
why I believe after that race, after that time, it's even more important to make sure you do go back and do those things, with the people that you love and that you've been kind of missing out on.
for sure. Hey, sorry guys, I realize that my audio has been a little bit on the fritz. My apologies for that. Tina, have you been able to hear me okay, or has it been a little scratchy?
Um, Yeah, sometimes when I was talking and if you said something, I couldn't really hear what you were asking me.
Okay.
That sounds 10 times louder now, so
Does
yeah,
this
much
sound a
better.
lot better? Okay, good. I just fixed something. So guys, my apologies about that. Hopefully the audio is a lot better, and thank you for chiming in there. Um, there we go, much better. Perfect. So that's really cool. So, at the run experience, one of the things that I really believe in, and we really believe in, is, empowering runners to, be athletes as much as they are runners as well. And a big, aspect of that is strength training. And, going back to that runner definition and that, culture and community definition, we were talking about this before. Running in general believes in strength training, but it's almost something that it's like, for me, it's funny. I like to joke. It's like, well, it's not cross training. It should just be training. It's not off season
Yeah.
training. It should just be training. So, what do you do for strength training and other activities around your running that you feel like has supported you in your marathon efforts and keeps you being a human being, as you like to say?
Yeah, and Nate, I mean, I think I mentioned this to you when we talked before, but I this is what I love about the run experience, what I love about what we're doing, what you do, because I'm just such a huge fan of strength training and just or training, and just all the other things that go into, being an athlete, like you said, my I have a strength training coach, and he always says to me, like what, um, being able to sit in a gym and lift some weights with your arm in a certain position. I mean, what good is that going to do you in the rest of your life? But if you are an athlete who can actually like lift things up and help people move houses without pulling your back or doing all these things, you're actually doing, life tasks rather than just doing it for the sake of like staring at yourself in a mirror. But yeah, well, firstly, I guess I'll do the cardio versions. I do swim and I do have an elliptigo. I don't know if you know what one of those are, or if
I
anyone
do.
doesn't know what it is, I'd
Basically,
Google it.
it's like an elliptical trainer with wheels that you ride out.
Yeah, it moves. Yeah, it's really, really cool. And it doesn't even feel like you're working out. Like it's just fun. It's one of those things that I feel like people should pay for, when you're like by a beach
Yeah.
and you can pay for those like hours, an hour of one of those like cycling things. It's a little carriage. I feel like an elliptico would be one of those because it's so much fun. So I do that, or swimming twice a week for an hour. And then, yeah, I do strength training. I have a coach, Drew Watts, who I see twice a week, and we do all kinds of functional training. He makes me like push a sled. We do plyometrics.
That's
We
cool.
do heavy lifting, which was a bit of a surprise for me at first.
Yeah.
This as well, that runners are very afraid of building up their bodies because this fear of becoming too big to be a runner. But I went through that as well, and I've realized that I've come out the other side, and I didn't get big, I didn't get too muscly. I just feel strong, and I
Yeah.
I look defined, and yeah, it makes such a big difference, and it having that strength in your body as a whole rather than just your running muscles is just
Yeah. And
it's been huge for me.
what's interesting, we haven't released any barbell programs yet with the Run Experience. Guys, it's coming. Don't worry. This is the body weight is the gateway drug. But one of the things that I've found, introducing that slightly heavier barbell, one, you have your runners full attention. They're not thinking about, their email that they have to write later in the day or anything else. And two, that external load forces you to create so much tension in the system where, the abdominals are on, back is on, everything is sort of firing. And
Hmm.
in a weird way, that tension is what creates that stability, which actually builds
Yeah.
that stronger, safer athlete. And what I find interesting, almost counterintuitive, is most athletes will choose, well, I need to go lightweight, high repetitions all the time. But in those systems, you don't get the best kinesthetic feedback. So you can end up just perpetuating the ugly movement patterns that probably get you in trouble in the first place. So you end up getting
Hmm.
more hurt doing higher reps, low weight than the other way around.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I actually it's funny. I went to the UVA speed clinic in Virginia, and they analyzed my running form. And before they gave me any recommendations, he said, "Show me what you do for a warm up. Show me what you do for your cross training and all kinds of things." And I did. I showed him what exercises I do, and he goes, "Well, you can get rid of 90% of those." And I was like, "What?" Because I was doing, yeah, all these lots of, like you said, high rep, low weight
Yeah.
things, and but I was doing them all wrong. And he was like, "Do you realize you're making your running worse by doing this wrong?" So yeah, it's all about doing the right kind of movements and, like you said, firing those patterns in a correct way. And, yeah, the thing that my strength coach always says is that the those high weight exercises, if you think about it, running is a high rep, low weight exercise because you're
Mhm.
just doing the same movement, the same pattern over and over again. So by working different muscles for low rep but higher weight, you're actually making yourself stronger because you're not just doing the same thing as running.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense. But that's what I've really seen a difference in actually doing exercises with the correct form, but doing lower weight than doing lots of high reps. And yeah, I haven't had as many injuries as well.
That's really great to hear. Um, well, so cool. So it sounds like you've been, it's really fun when you reached out, wanted to talk, and I got a sense, and I was like, oh my goodness, I haven't found too many, elite level runners who have, really taken this on, other than say, well, they strength train, and it's great to connect with athletes who we feel like really sort of see and embrace this style approach.
Hmm.
Do you see this spreading further with more runners in that area? I know that there's been a lot of chatter with Ryan Hall lately, getting more into strength training, and then even Jeff Godet getting more into strength training himself. But interestingly, they've only done this after their running career.
Mm. Yeah, I definitely see it becoming more important. I see more and more people moving their way over to the gym, realizing the importance of this in injury prevention. I mean, I know in the elite world, it's kind of the people who are staying healthy and running well year after year are kind of, everyone's kind of speculating, or what are they doing? How are they staying healthy? And I think it's kind of coming out that the strength training and building those muscles, those tiny little muscles that running doesn't quite hit but can cause, massive issues down the road. By strengthening those, you're preventing so many other issues. So yeah, I definitely can see a difference. But then on the other hand, I don't know if it's just one of those situations where, because once someone tells you about something, you see it everywhere. So I don't know if it's just that with me, but I do think that there's a difference. There's people like you guys, the Run Experience, coming out with great programs. Yeah, Runners Connect has a strength training program. You see it everywhere now. So I think hopefully more and more runners are going to start paying attention, and hopefully as more and more runners do that, that's less injuries. So
Yeah.
win-win.
Win-win, totally. That's really cool. So I have a question. This was typed in from Mike. He can't listen live, but he wants to do that. And then, guys, get ready because for those of you who have any live questions that you would like answered by Tina or myself, go ahead and drop that in the questions tab right now, and we'll put you on in a second. So Mike asks, he says he's currently reading Matt Fitzgerald's 80-20 book, which talks about 80% of the training should be done below, ventilatory threshold. He talks about, a majority of your training should be kind of down at that lower intensity, 20% at higher intensity, which, as he said, is 102+% of lactate threshold. He's getting quite technical right here. This appears to contrast with other programs such as FIRST, in all capitals, which I'm not familiar with, but which
what is the example? FIRST, it's basically running faster but running less.
Yeah, right. Which prescribes more time in higher training zones, and by training in there, you get more comfortable with uncomfortableness, etc. And he basically says, well, both of these approaches seem opposite to each other, but they both make sense. What are your thoughts there in terms of, these two different approaches? Are they really different approaches after all, or are they just sort of, talking about the same thing from different ends?
Well, I mean, I haven't looked into the FIRST style training too much, but from what I've read of it, I'm not really a fan of that. I can kind of see how it would make sense, and I guess I could kind of see how Matt's way of doing things with 80% easy, if you didn't have much time to run, then, would you really get much out of it? I don't know. But I personally am a huge fan of Matt Fitzgerald. I have interviewed him on the podcast. I have stayed in touch with him a lot, and he is so knowledgeable. So I haven't seen much recently on that kind of FIRST, the fast training but less of it method. So I don't know if that's just kind of faded away, but yeah, I haven't really seen anything on it. I definitely keep I would say maybe not 80% easy, but not far off at all. Most people are surprised. My easy running pace is, let's just say my marathon, when I did that 2:37, that's 6 minutes dead per mile. But my average pace for easy runs or recovery runs is about 9 minutes per mile. So that's 3 minutes per mile slower. So I don't think people realize how much slower elites actually run than their race pace. Like a lot of people will say to me, oh, my race pace is 8 minutes, so I run like 9 minutes per mile. And I'm like, well, no, you need to be way slower than that. So I think I'm a huge fan of those easy runs, like truly making them so easy that you can breathe through your nose the entire time. You can talk to a friend, a full conversation the whole time. So I'm a huge fan of doing that, and it makes it more enjoyable, it makes, especially for new runners, like if you're running easy and comfortable and where you feel like you could do it again, then you're actually enjoying it. You're looking around and you're seeing, the beautiful scenery you're running by, or you're actually kind of enjoying the motion of running rather than just being like, oh, I still have half a mile left. Oh, I still, you're thinking you actually just get to enjoy the motion of running.
So I imagine when you were building it for London, you were doing, probably some time of your long runs, at race pace or plus or minus. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. And also, are you doing your long runs at that 9 minute pace, or are you doing a little bit faster?
I had some of both. I'd always in the past kind of run my long runs a bit too fast most of the time, closer to race pace. But this time around, one of the biggest changes we made was we had 3 or 4 what we called time on your feet runs, which was like as slow as I wanted, but I had to do more than the time I was running in the marathon. So for me, I think we did 2 hours and 50 minutes because we hoped that I would be finished by that time. But that was very easy, very comfortable running. So I had quite a few of those. And the same thing for anyone listening, I would do the same kind of thing, but maybe not. Like if you're a 5-hour marathon, I wouldn't say go out there for 5 hours and 10 minutes. But definitely to incorporate some of those longer, slower runs so that your body gets used to just being out there. But then, we did have a few, I think only 2 races where I would have race pace in it, but it wasn't for the whole time. I actually, the World Half Marathon Championships ended up being in my training, so that ended up being a race faster than race pace effort. But usually, I'd only have maybe one effort around half a marathon at race pace, and the rest of it is kind of um, not as easy as an
Yeah.
easy run, not a full conversation, but maybe, to the point where if you were looking at heart rate, maybe your heart rate was about 160 to 170.
Yeah.
So
Are
still
you
not high.
training with heart rate, or do you only train with pace?
Well, I actually just got a new Garmin and it's got heart rate, so I'm not gonna lie and say that it hasn't been tempting me to look at it.
Yeah.
I have been kind of interested in it, but no, I don't. I don't generally train by heart rate.
You haven't trained with heart
I'm
rate in
more of a
the past?
feel. What was that?
Have you trained with heart rate in the past, or is that just never?
No, never. And it's just literally because my Garmin shows it that
Oh, that's interesting.
I'm just curious by it. But no, we've always done pace, but like I mentioned, I often don't even look at pace. I just kind of go by effort.
Yeah, that's interesting. Uh, so Mike also asked a question about it's a runner's power meter. He just maybe wanted to sense if you're familiar with it. It's called Stride, Stryd, or he calls it quote unquote power meter for running. Um, is this something that you've seen in your, coaching, running, podcast dealings? Have you seen that pop up?
No, I've never even heard of that. I actually just interviewed the founder of Strava, so
Oh,
I would
cool.
have thought he maybe would have mentioned that if he knew about it. But no, I've never even heard of that. I'm actually not too big of a numbers. I mean, I like I said, looking at my Garmin data afterwards, but I'm not too much of a numbers like nerdy. I don't follow it. I'm definitely nerdy, but not in the like traditional sense of looking at my macros or counting
Yeah,
my calories or the numbers and the sciencey side of things. I actually don't tend to look at those. Like I said, I just love going by my gut. And then my coach is definitely not a big fan of all the numbers and the technical side of things. He's more just about keeping it simple. So
yeah,
yeah, I haven't heard of Stride. I'm not sure if I would use it even if I did, but
sure.
I'm gonna go look it up now because I'm curious.
Yeah, right, 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 for sure. I hear you there. That's really, really cool. I like that. So let me see here. We had one or two more little questions in
There's
there.
one, yeah,
Uh-huh.
there's a few more I can see.
Oh yeah. Which one do you? Is there any ones that you want to take a crack at?
Um, I mean, I guess there's two here that I can see that heat
Oh,
tolerance.
that's right.
So with the warmer season, I mean, I guess I would push you straight to Runners Connect just because I know we've done a number of articles, and I'm happy to send them to you, Nate, and you
Yeah.
can send them over to people about training to the heat, how to adapt your body to the heat, because that there is a lot that comes into that. But one thing I would just say is just don't panic too much at the beginning. Heat does make a big difference, especially humidity on your performance. So don't panic if you do feel tired, and I would definitely adjust accordingly because you're going to feel bad. So if you do have a race coming up and it's maybe an earlier part of the season with the heat,
Mm,
don't say your race pace was going to be 8 minute pace. Don't go 8 minute pace because it's not going to work. So
mm,
kind of go by effort those first few times you are out there in the and then allow your body to adjust. And yeah, I just guess I don't want to spend too long on this because I know you have some other things, but yeah, I would say directing to Runners Connect. Actually, the page you're on right now, there's a search bar, so I guess you could just even if
yeah.
you go down
Well,
a
I
bit,
wanted to I
there's
wanted
just
to
a search.
um, share. So if I just say heat training,
hmm
uh,
hmm
how to run better in the heat. There we go.
So yeah, all the different
Look
things
at this.
people can go on. There's loads of different articles on there, so
Well,
Jeff makes them really easy to use and very helpful. So
well, those are great.
uh,
I just dropped that in the comments section so you guys can see that, and also you can go to runnersconnect.net and you can see the blog as well as the podcast. And I definitely want to talk
mhm,
about the podcast too for
mhm.
a little bit there. Let's see here. So we got a little bit into the heat, and we got some good resources
Yeah.
there.
and then there's one about with mind beating you up before and during a race. So yes, this is another thing I'm very passionate about and something that I don't mind talking about. Actually, today on my blog, I posted a thing what I called mental freakouts, um, where your body, where your mind will say to you, I can't do this, I don't want to do this. Like I said to myself, why can't I just be a normal person who watches TV on a Sunday? When you're having those thoughts in your head, when
Yeah.
the mental demons are strongest, like how to handle them. So yeah, I mean, I just wanted to reassure the person who asked that question that everyone struggles with it. It is tough, but the biggest thing I've been learning recently is to reassure yourself rather than beating yourself up. So in the past, I'd always say, I can't do this, and then I'd like kind of argue with myself, yes, you can.
Yes.
And then like I'd say, I don't want to do this, yes, you do, like kind of
Yeah.
yelling back at myself. But I found it's actually more effective to when you say, I can't do this, to be like, it's okay, you're fine, you're doing well, you've done well so far. Like reassure yourself and kind of, in essence, being your own best friend. So what you would say to maybe your best friend or your daughter, if you have a daughter or a son, like if they were struggling and saying, Mom, I can't do this, you'd say, yes, darling, you can, you're strong, you're going to do it, and reassuring yourself. So kind of giving yourself a bit of slack rather than punishing yourself for showing any weakness. So hopefully that helps.
I, I can appreciate that. I think that every runner of all levels can appreciate that conversation that goes on, all the time. And
Hmm.
I think one thing to add to that is, you know, the reason why we partly have those mental freakouts is just because we're invested in it and we care about it.
Hmm.
We've got some
Hmm.
skin in the game. And just sometimes even recognize that it's like, hey, you're just nervous because you care, and it's okay to
Hmm.
care. That's
Yeah,
part of
absolutely.
part of the thing. Well, that's really neat. We have just like 3 minutes left. You've been doing this podcast, and I've just been listening to a few episodes. I really enjoyed the episode and the interview with Christopher McDougall,
Hmm.
and
I just recorded another one. He's awesome.
he's amazing. And I just actually downloaded and started reading his new book on, the art of the hero, which
Hmm.
has been really a fun read. And then I just listened to an interview with Jeff Godet. So could you, tell these guys a little bit about, your podcast and why you started it and where you see it going?
Yeah, I mean, this is so yeah, I am the community manager for Runners Connect, so I do all the kind of everything you see that's out there, the blog, podcast, promoting the company. But I absolutely love this podcast. So yeah, I interview people. I try and make it very varied, like people from all kinds of walks of life. Like I've had sports psychologists on there, like you said, Christopher McDougall, the author of Seabiscuit and Unbroken, Laura Hillenbrand.
Oh, that's great.
I have, yeah, I get like elite runners on there. I get nutritionists on there. I get scientists who have done all the research, the really heavy duty research, kind of trying to cover every area, everything. Like I said, I've got Strava coming in the next few weeks. I have a politician who was originally from Ethiopia who ended up fleeing the country, and he was a world-class masters runner. Just kind of really trying to get from every walk of life. I'd like it to keep growing. It is doing very well. We get, as it says there, about 60,000 downloads a month. So that's huge. But most of all, I try to get a lot of everyday runners and people who just have inspiring stories. Like we had one a few weeks ago from David Alley, who had never even run a marathon, and then he ended up doing a run all the way around the edge of Australia, which was incredible. He's just a normal guy and talks about taking on challenges, and I really try and look into all these different areas. I've had Ben Greenfield on there,
Mhm.
he's very well known. I've had people talking about eating disorders, people, just all kinds of different people, and it's really, really fun for me, and anyone who does listen to podcasts will want to check it out in the future.
That's so great. Well, I would definitely recommend if you guys listen to their podcast that I thought episode 100 was fantastic. One, not only was it a little bit of a milestone, but you got to get an interview of Jeff Godet, who's, the coach and
Hmm.
founder of Runners Connect. You get to hear his background with running and his professional running career, what he's doing with strength training now, and what these guys have created a pretty awesome community over in Runners Connect. So that would be a great episode to listen to. Are there any other episodes that you really liked that would be a great, introduction to the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I have the one which I think for most people is the sucker. It sucks people in, which was Dick Beardsley.
Hmm.
He was famous. He's the guy that the book called Duel in the Sun focuses on. He nearly beat Alberto Salazar coming from as a nobody, nearly beat Alberto Salazar in the Boston Marathon. But it isn't so much about his running journey, even though that is inspiring. He talks about how he became addicted to prescription drugs, taking like 100 pills a day. He talked about overcoming that and all these setbacks that he's had since his running career was over. He talks openly about it, and it's so inspiring. It'll bring you to tears. It's just amazing. And then yeah, Chris McDougall is another favorite one of mine. There's a really cool one out today with Steve Cam of Nerd Fitness. I don't know if anyone follows him. He's really big in the fitness world, and that was a really fun one. So, and then I'd say Julie Benson about you don't have to. She talks about her overcoming her eating disorder, and then she was actually at the Boston bombing site when the
Oh
bomb
my
went off.
goodness.
So she has a pretty inspirational story.
That's so good. Well, Tina, thank you for spending this hour with us and, answering these guys' questions. Really happy to have you on and connect a little bit. We love that, we have a, brother, sister, run program out there that exists in the world, Runners Connect, that really is working and believing in the same things and doing a lot of good in the running community. So this is so cool. And guys, you have that
Yeah.
podcast and this blog where these guys go ham on a lot of subjects. And I know that Jeff really prides himself and on your guys, really digging into the science behind this thing. So guys, consider this a great trusted resource if you really want to get into that next level of detail. And Tina, is
Yeah.
there any other place we should find you, or people should be able to look you up?
Yeah, well, firstly, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. I've been kind of watching your community over the last few weeks, and I really enjoyed kind of learning a bit more about you guys and how you do things, and it's been great to see. But yeah, as you are pulling up right now, I do have my personal blog, tinamuir.com. And you can find me on most social media channels at
Right.
Tina Muir. And if you have any questions or anything you want to know, I'm happy to help with anything. But yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, I am Tina Muir 88 on Instagram because
That's
someone
right.
stole
I'm
my
pulling
name.
up the Instagram as
But
well. We can see I see
yeah,
some dumbbells in the
yeah.
background. She's in the gym. I see a good looking
I'm a little
there.
12-year-old girl in the corner there. Can you see that? I look like I'm 12,
I know.
but
That's
there's no going on.
I love
But yeah, and there's Chris McDougall, as you see.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that's right. Oh, that's so great.
yeah,
Well,
so but no, I've really enjoyed it, so thank you.
good. Well, guys, thanks again so much. Keep being you guys and kicking butt and keep making things happen online. And if you're listening to this not live, we're going to record this obviously and send it out to you. If there is a little bad audio section, that's totally my fault. Tina had nothing to do with it. I'll do some
You sure
purpose
you don't want to
amendments, I
tell me?
promise. All right, guys. Well, thanks again so much, and we will see you online.